Great, thank you. Hi everyone. Um, so I think we're probably going to start seeing people coming in as we go along, but I want to get started. I don't want us to wait too long to get started. I want to get started too late. So I just want to welcome everybody to today's conversation. This is kind of a part two of our speaker series on our highlighting of the Gaza donor appeal. Um, Last month we hosted two speakers as well. We had Aida Saeed from Ta'awun, and we had Mona Abbas from Asfari Foundation. And today we invited two new speakers with us from our donor appeal, Joyce Ajlouny and Saleem Zaru. Hi, Saleem. How are you?
Good, how are
Um,
you?
Fine, thank you. So I just want to explain a little bit of kind of give some context again to this conversation if you weren't able to join us last month, to explain why we're focusing on these organizations, why we've invited them to speak with all of you, and kind of what we're hoping to get out of these conversations. So, it's been 68 days since October 7th. Um, and the situation in Gaza has been exponentially just getting worse and worse and worse. We're looking at over 20,000 dead. We're looking at over 8,000 of those children. We're looking at a political disconnect and an environment that is just very kind of difficult to comprehend across the globe. And I think, for us at the Arab Foundations Forum, this was something that, first of all, is very personal to me personally, as someone who's half Palestinian, who has family and friends and colleagues in Gaza. And then secondly, also just from, the perspective of our network, which, has a lot of obviously Arab organizations and people working across the Arab region. So it just felt very urgent, very, very quickly. And we immediately were in contact with Mona Abbas, who actually reached out to me, I think on October 7th, and just basically said, we have to do something. We have to do something immediately. What can we do? What can we mobilize? And so we very quickly connected with Aida at Ta'awun, who's also a member of AFF's board, and just sort of said, what can we do very quickly? What can we do urgently to mobilize resources, mobilize funding? And this is very, I mean, I'm talking like, day one. So we had no inkling of how grave and how desperate the situation would become as time went on. Um, and I think we launched the very first donor appeal probably 5 days into this absolute catastrophe. And we invited both the American Friends Service Committee and the United Palestinian Appeal to join. And again, I want to make sure that people understand why these are the three organizations, with Asfari Foundation being one of the donors to spearhead this call to action. Um, we haven't been gatekeeping any kind of donation links. We want, the more people donate to the more organizations that are doing incredible work throughout this crisis, the better. And we haven't been gatekeeping any of that information. We've, shared everyone's links. Any organization that's reached out to AFF and said, would you share the link of our organization? We have shared. So that includes things like the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. It includes Medical Aid Palestine. It includes all the UN agencies, the WHO Foundation, et cetera, et cetera. But the reason why AFF specifically wanted to focus on these three organizations, the American Friends Service Committee, United Palestinian Appeal, and Ta'awun, with the support of the Asfari Foundation, is that we feel it's very important to center Palestinian voices in this, um, to elevate and highlight Palestinian-led initiatives. And over and above that, really also important that the three organizations that we have highlighted in our donor appeal are currently in Gaza, have been in Gaza for years. I mean, Joyce will tell you when we start our conversation with her about how long the AFSC has been in Gaza and working in Palestine. And so we wanted to make sure that when we were telling people where to send your donations, that you knew that those donations were going to organizations that were already there, that had immediate access to their funding, had immediate access to the communities in need, And the more this goes on and the longer this goes on and the more desperate it becomes, the more urgent it is that we are empowering local organizations with local teams that have immediate access to the communities in need. That importance is just becoming more and more urgent. So that is really why these are the three organizations that we're looking at and that we're encouraging you to send your donations to. And the reason that we're having this kind of focused speaker series on the Gaza United Appeal is to allow these organizations an opportunity to tell you, the individual donors and the funders, what exactly is happening on the ground, what their teams are seeing, what their plans are as things escalate, what their plans will be after all of this is over, hopefully, dear God, soon. And what they're doing with your donations and exactly what all of this advocacy means and what the plans are for moving forward. So we're looking at this from the perspective of an Arab philanthropic network. Our aim is to help Arab philanthropy be more strategic and to help Arab philanthropists make more strategic decisions, as well as to encourage collaborations, to encourage all the things that a network is meant to encourage, right? The sharing of data, the sharing of knowledge, of information, and to allow a platform for collaboration. So we launched the speaker series earlier this year. And initially, and I mean, this continues to be the mission of this series, is that it's a little bit different than a webinar. It's not just meant for an exchange of ideas, but it's really meant to be a bit more of an intimate conversation between friends, between colleagues, between acquaintances, and people with like-minded missions and values. Normally, our speaker series is a one-on-one conversation, but we felt that this issue is so critical and so important that we're opening it up to making it more of a bit of a panel. Although it will still be a one-on-one conversation, we'll spend a good chunk of time just listening to our speakers and understanding a bit more about what motivates them, their backgrounds, a little bit more about who they are as people and why this motivates the work that they do. And then once we're done with this, we'll also be able to open it up to all of you for questions. There's a Q&A tab on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we encourage you, as we're talking, to go ahead and send us your questions, and then they'll be moderated, and we'll make sure to ask the questions at the end of this, the last half hour of the session. So that's my spiel. And I'm going to hand it over to Joyce. Welcome, Joyce, first of all. And I just want to open it up and give you kind of like, an open space to tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about what you're doing at the American Friends Service Committee, and a bit about the committee itself, and like what are the Quakers doing in Palestine? What have they been doing since the 40s? So yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Naila. It's good to be with you, and thank you for having us join this wonderful effort. We're really grateful. Hi, Saleem, as well. It's wonderful to be with you in the space. A little bit about myself. I'm Palestinian American. I was born and raised, I was born in Jerusalem, raised in Ramallah, and moved to the US about 12 years ago. I have had a career in international relief and development, working for the UN in Jerusalem, working for Oxfam. Before this, I was the head of the Ramallah Friends School, which is an amazing place, my alma mater, as well as Saleem's, and an amazing Quaker school that's been in operation in Palestine for over 150 years. And I then joined the American Friends Service Committee 6 years ago. The American Friends Service Committee is a Quaker a peace and social justice organization. We have been in operation for over 100 years. We received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1947 for the humanitarian work that we did after the World War I and World War II. The American Friends Service Committee is a global organization, so we're in 16 countries. We have a domestic US program that challenges racial injustice and immigration. And in the world, we are a peace-building organization. We work in countries where there is conflict, and we help communities cope and avert conflict as well. And so that is sort of in in a nutshell what the American Friends Service Committee does. It's a very courageous organization. And the American Friends Service Committee goes where others, don't go because they don't want to take a risk. They don't want to lose funding. So, and we take bold positions, and that's where I want to bring in Palestine. We have been in Palestine since 1948. The UN actually asked us to go to Gaza. That's before the UNRWA was created, to offer humanitarian support and relief work for the Gazan community there. And we did that in 1948, where we were the primary organization providing aid. Then it's sad to see that today we are actually doing the same with the same communities and their offsprings. It's really sad to just that reality in itself. We then refused to continue doing the aid when the UN asked us to help with building more of permanent structures and a permanent shelters for the Gazan communities in Gaza, because we held strong the notion that the refugees need to go back home, and that is something that we still hold till today. So the American Friends Service Committee does the work in Gaza. We've been there since 48 doing humanitarian work, but we also work on other things like working with the youth to build their resilience, to build their movement and their connection with other youth, other Palestinian youth across the Palestinian spectrum. Our program in the West Bank and Gaza primarily focuses on challenging the fragmentation of the Palestinian communities, and that has been imposed on them, as we all are aware, and in building those connections with youth inside the Green Line in Jerusalem, in Palestine, in the West Bank, Gaza, and as of late also in refugee camps in Jordan and in Lebanon. And so that is sort of what we do on the ground. I think what's unique about AFSC as well is that we also have a very, very strong program domestically here that aims at, in the United States, where we work on educating the public about what's going on there. This has been longstanding for decades. We have a strong advocacy component to the work as well, with faith-based organizations, with decision makers and policymakers on Capitol Hill. We have an office in Washington, D.C. that works on all of the above and pushes certain legislations that support Palestinian rights. We have an office at the UN, the Quaker UN office, as well, that is there in New York to influence the UN system and state players in the UN on global issues, including that of Palestine. We have I don't want to spend too much time on that because I do want us to focus on Gaza, but very, very quickly, we have been supporting the BDS movement. We are or the organization that does a lot of the back end research on corporations that are profiting from occupation. We have a website, I think Walid can put that in the chat, that's called Investigate, where people can screen their investments to see if the corporations they invest in are complicit in supporting the oppressive occupation. And so that is something that we do. We provide all of that back-end research. We've supported Betty McCollum, representative in Congress, in her bill, No Way to Treat a Child, where we're saying no tax dollars should go for the detention of Palestinian children. And so that is another thing. We also have bringing it back to Gaza, a campaign that's been 10 years in the making, which is called Gaza Unlocked. And what Gaza Unlocked is meant to do is to bring the voices of Gazans into the US public. And so that is something that we have done in different ways and forms. Online, we bring their voices, but also we've sponsored many tours of Gazan activists like Ahmed Aburteme 3 years ago, who was sort of the mastermind behind the Gaza Great March of Return. You know, those marches on the border every Friday. His nonviolent approach was something that we wanted to bring to the U.S. public, and we sponsored his tour in the United States, and we made sure that he had access to media and whatnot. Also on Gaza, as just last year, we published a book. It's called Light in Gaza, and I love what this book stands for, Light in Gaza, because we asked 12 Gazan authors, scholars to imagine Gaza without occupation, a free Gaza. What does it look like? And so it's an anthology. They wrote beautifully 12 pieces. The book is online. People can order it, Light in Gaza. And one of the authors is Rifat Al-Arir. And he has a chapter in that book. And we all know that we all lost Rifat last week when he was assassinated in Gaza. So that is something that we have had a strong relationship with Rifat because of that, working together with him on this book, and we will miss him dearly. So the work, as you could see, encompasses a lot of work on the ground. As I said, with churches, we're part of the Churches for Middle East Peace, for example, a group that brings together Christian congregations to entice them to do more and better on the issue of Palestine. And so we are there front and center doing that influencing work because we feel that the US is a major player, as we all know, and we want to be of influence on the public, on the faith community, on the policymakers and the decision makers, and we continue to press on the issues of ceasefire, on stopping unconditional aid to Israel. We don't want our tax dollars to support the obliteration of our people, and we're calling obviously for the unconditional flow of aid and basic life-saving commodities to Gaza, opening all borders and all crossings, something that we have been calling for. And so I said a lot, Naila, and I'll stop there. I'll take more questions and talk about the details of what we're doing once you want me to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joyce. Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible the long history that you've had and the impact that you've had, both on the ground and in the US. And I want to ask you a little bit more specifically about AFSC's support of the BDS movement. And I'm going to explain why I want specifically to focus on this. Because we've seen now, obviously, every other day there's something new to boycott. There's a new call to boycott this, boycott that, boycott Zara, boycott Starbucks, boycott, etc. And it's understandable, and I get it. But I think for a lot of people, it also starts getting a little bit confusing. And personally, I'm also someone who adheres to the BDS, and part of why I encourage people to understand and learn more about BDS is because I like the messaging of BDS, and I like the fact that it is a very targeted movement. I also like the fact that it's a nonviolent movement, and it's targeted for maximum impact. So, even the authors of the BDS, when you go on their website, they kind of explain very clearly why it's only 6 or 7 organizations that they're telling you to boycott. There are other kind of more organic movements that they say, you should feel free to to follow, but that these, and the reasoning behind it makes a lot of sense to me. It's feasible, it's doable. But for people who have questions like, I mean, this is coming even from my own personal anecdotal, my friends have been saying things like, well, we live in Egypt or we live in Jordan and these companies don't exist there. So how can I feel like I'm doing something if none of the companies that I can boycott are on this list? So I just want to understand a bit more from your perspective, from an organizational perspective, why the BDS movement specifically, and then what are the hallmarks of it that you see as beneficial to the cause?
Sure. Thanks. Well, you said a lot of it. I mean, we believe in supporting nonviolent resistance movements, and that is, a basic Quaker premise we Quakers believe in nonviolence and the power of nonviolent resistance, and so that is something that drew us to the BDS. What we do, we're not part of organizing or part of the movement per se. I think it's a very organic movement. That's, I think, what's attractive about it. People, join where they want and take what they like and leave what they don't like. And I think that is something that is true about the BDS movement. What we thought we would do is use our resources to do research and put it out there. Put it out there. People who want to use it, they can. There are 200 companies researched on our website on Investigate. So you could go in and read about them. It's very carefully done, very scientifically done. Our researchers do a fantastic job highlighting why these particular companies need to be divested from. So if it's an organization, a company, an individual, you can screen your investments, right? So it's beyond the boycott. It's about divestment, right? This is what we're doing. We work on supporting the boycott movement, but our focus is on corporate divestment. And so put in your investments, and you see if they're complicit in supporting occupation, then you are encouraged to divest. And so that is sort of what we put out there and as of late, I think Walid put a link. Our researchers did an incredible research about companies profiting from Israel's attack on Gaza. And so there's a list of them there. This is very new research just out. And so that it's people will do with it what they want, and different organizations, different companies will they have that available to them, and that's what we do is we put out information and we leave it to them to discern what they will do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. That's exactly what these are exactly the kinds of resources that we want to make available to people. And I also like your positioning of it as, this is information that's available to you. Do with it what you will. No one's pushing one thing or the other, but just letting you know this is the information.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's really appreciated. So now just to the more kind of specifics about today. Okay, so American Friends, your team, the work that you guys are doing in Gaza today on day 68 of this, genocide.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about, like, how is your team? What are they telling you? What are you hearing?
Yeah, of course. Listen, I mean, AFSC has done humanitarian work all over the world. We continue, we're not a huge humanitarian organization. We're more of a peace and justice organization, but still, we are there when a humanitarian crisis breaks out. And we have never in our history, in our 106 years of history, seen anything like we are seeing today in Gaza. Normally, there is, if there is no access to food, if there's a earthquake or if there's a a war. If there's no access to food, there's some access to water. If there's no access to water, there's electricity, or there's shelter, or there's fuel. Or the fact that all systems are collapsing in Gaza, including medical, sanitation. We've hearing horrific stories of the impact of the cold and the rain on people, and we're really worried about the outbreak of diseases, etc. But when everything breaks down, aid workers can't come in, no evacuations, nowhere is safe. In the history of humanitarian crises, we've never seen anything like that. And so our handbook of how we do humanitarian work that we've used, is almost sort of irrelevant for Gaza, because we have to do it differently. I think to me, you asked about our staff, and they are the aid workers. And normally in a situation like this, aid workers will come externally to help. And today we have to rely on our staff in Gaza, who have to also fend for themselves and their families. I was speaking to Firas, the head of our office in Gaza last week, and he said he spends the first 2 to 3 hours a day looking for food and water for his own family, and then he goes off and looks for vendors and whatnot, so he can provide some distribution of aid to the communities where in Rafah or Deir al-Balah, etc. So, they've all lost their homes. We don't have a huge staff in Gaza. We have about 3 staff, and but we have a lot of partners. We've recruited a lot of additional support, obviously, to do the distributions. And we've managed to do, and I think Walid will put a link in the chat, if he hasn't done that, with an update of all the numbers and the thousands of families that we've helped so far with food, hygiene kits, as of late, some fresh vegetables, etc. So all of that, we are doing as much as we can. It's really nothing compared to the need, as you all know. And all organizations doing humanitarian work, we're going to fail miserably if the aid trucks and humanitarian crossings are not open soon. I mean, what is coming in is really a drop in the ocean, and we really need something. So if it doesn't open up, it's just going to be a grave situation with starvation, hunger, disease, etc. So we are grateful for our staff who are able to do the work despite the situation that they're personally enduring as displaced people themselves, but they're doing it, and we call them our heroes, and we are very blessed to have them there. The shops and stockpiles have been depleted. We whatever we can get our hands on to purchase and distribute, we will do. We are also doing some work in Egypt. We have staff there who are working with civil society organizations and the Red Crescent. We've purchased a few trucks of food and medicines. I think one of them is about to enter in a few days, we hope, and the others are still stuck in Cairo. So it's very, very bureaucratic and difficult to get commodities in. I'd be interested to hear from Saleem, his experience with UPA as well. I know that there are challenges for all of us, and whatever we can do, we are trying our best to get as much in as possible. We're also working. I just wanted to highlight. Naila, we're working in the West Bank with Gazans who are stuck there. Some of them were there for medical reasons, they're patients, and others are there for their workers who are stuck in the West Bank. And so we have been providing them with some commodities, winterization, clothes, blankets, etc. and food and meals. So we have been working with Gazans in the West Bank. But there's the one thing about also Gaza I just wanted to highlight is that the lack of security and fuel also reduces the effectivity of our aid distribution. So who wants to go and distribute aid in the middle of a bombings, and so that is something that has been really hampering and hinders our ability to do distribution with confidence. I mean, the worst nightmare for us is to hear that our staff were injured, while doing distributions, and so we don't want that to happen. So their safety and security are paramount to us, but we also know that there's no safe place in Gaza as well. So I'm going to stop here and to leave more space for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. I mean, this is, I just, it's so critical, I think, for people to hear this and to really kind of absorb and understand the reality of this. Like when we're talking about all the push from the humanitarian aid sector, whether it's local, regional, global, whatever, is that it's not the lack of will to provide, it's the lack of access to get any of this in.
Exactly.
And I think, what really needs to be pressed as sort of a point of fact is that we are literally looking at, if it's not genocide by, murder, by bombs, by fire, it will be genocide by starvation and by illness and by deprivation. So I'm gonna move it to Saleem to give him some time also to kind of talk us through what UPA is doing, and then we'll come back and open the floor for everyone who's with us to kind of ask questions. And then I will obviously ask you in the end. I have a couple of just very, targeted questions at the end about what people can do and how they can support further. So Saleem, I'm going to welcome you. Thank you so much for being with us and just for everything that you guys are doing and everything that you've been a part of. And I want to give you the opportunity just to kind of open it up by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then a bit about UPA as well. And like, how did this organization get started and what have you been doing? And then we'll take it from there.
Well, thank you, Naila. And thank you, Walid, and thank you, Arab Foundation Forum, for your support and recognition of our work and our commitment to supporting the Palestinian people in Palestine and throughout the diaspora. 2 sentences about me. Like Joyce, I was born in Jerusalem, grew up in Ramallah, and studied in Lebanon and the US and came back to the West Bank. I'm an architect and a city planner by profession. I practiced in Palestine and then in the US. And 13 years ago, I had the privilege of being asked to lead United Palestinian Appeal, which was a total career change for me. And a huge challenge and a blessing at the same time. At this stage in my life, it is really a blessing and an opportunity to be able to make a difference in other people's lives. Growing up in the West Bank as a Palestinian living under occupation, we were programmed always, you have to take care of yourself just because of the nature of the environment. And that's what we did. And this is taking care of others or making a difference in other people's lives is by far much more fulfilling than everything I've achieved throughout my career. And there comes a point in life where it is more about fulfillment and less about achievement. And people who achieve this, I feel, are lucky, and I'm happy I am one of them. So it has been, like I said, it's been quite a journey for the last 13 years with UPA. I am happy to be with UPA, and I am sad a little bit because when I took over UPA, our annual budget was $250,000. And last year, our budget for programs was about 85 million. And everybody was congratulating me, which is sad because that's only a reflection of the predicament that the Palestinian people continue to face. So this is really just in a nutshell, you could see the growth and development of UPA is a response to the need out there. When I first started at UPA, I was interviewed by a CNN journalist, and he asked me, he said, "What are your plans? What is your vision for UPA?" I said, "To go out of business." And he said, "My God, you just started. You want to drive it out of business?" I said, when UPA and other organizations like UPA go out of business, it means the Palestinian people are living under normal conditions. And we strive for that day. Sometimes we are more encouraged, sometimes we are less encouraged. And but this is the reality, this is the challenge, and just the life we are living. And I hope and I trust there will come a day better than these days we are living now. And I hope I'll be around to see it. So UPA is the oldest Palestinian American organization working to support the oldest Palestinian American humanitarian organization working to support the Palestinian people. It was established in 1978 by a group of Palestinian American professionals as an independent entity to support or to provide a platform for people in the US that want to support Palestine and the Palestinians. In those days, you are too young, Naila, to remember those days, but most political factions throughout the Arab world were working in the West Bank and Gaza through local organizations by funding them. And the founders of UPA wanted to find a platform that is totally independent, non-religious, non-political, non-sectarian, strictly humanitarian to support the Palestinians. And upon its establishment, immediately the work in the West Bank and Gaza started. And in 1982, 4 years later, after Sabra and Shatila took place, the massacre of Sabra and Shatila, that was the trigger to start UPA's work in Lebanon. And UPA has been working in the refugee camps in Lebanon since 1982. And in 2014, UPA's work started in Jordan in the camps that are not totally supported by UNRWA. And these are the camps that were established in 1967. And as you know, the mandate of UNRWA is to support the Palestine refugees and not necessarily the Palestinian refugees. So it focuses on people that were displaced in 1948. But there are a lot of people in Jordan in a couple of camps, primarily Hattin and Jarash camp, which is called Gaza camp, because most of the 32,000 inhabitants of that camp are from Gaza. So that's when UPA looked at that, and we saw it as an opportunity for service, and we established our operation in Jordan. Right now, UPA has offices in Beirut, in Amman, in Ramallah, in Gaza. Of course, our headquarters is in Washington, D.C., and we are establishing presence in Spain and in Egypt. A couple of years ago, we adopted a new 5-year strategic plan, which provides for UPA's expansion and Canada, Latin America, and that's all in the 5-year strategic plan. But anyway, where we are today, UPA saw a transformation over the years, and the 5-year strategic plan, or the mind shift, or the philosophy of UPA, was emphasized in this strategic plan. So the original mission of UPA, when it was established, was UPA strives to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people. Back in 1978, alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian people was important and was a virtue, and people were proud to be able to do that. Today, there needs to be more than alleviating suffering. So that through an internal dialogue at the organization and through engaging partners and all the stakeholders, the staff, the board, the International Advisory Council and all that, we adopted a new mission, which is UPA empowers Palestinians to improve their lives and communities through socially responsible and sustainable development. So UPA shifted from being a reactive or having a reactive mode to being a proactive organization. And that is reflected in the way we think about programs, the way we implement programs, the way we respond to programs and things like that. So this is our new mission, and we are proud to be where we are. And I think we have become more effective in a way. Our programs have grown again out of necessity. UPA's philosophy is to address the needs rather than come with an agenda. About 10 years ago, I was in Gaza, and we had a gathering for all our partner organizations. And over the years, I think we have probably over 120 partner organizations. So there were maybe, I don't know, a couple of hundred people in that room. And I asked them, if they had any questions. And one of the people there, one of the participants said, "Look, I'm really disappointed in UPA." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because you never tell us what grants to apply for. And sometimes we apply and we don't get funded. And other organizations tell us exactly what to apply for, and we get funded." And I said, "And how does that work?" He said, "I don't know, but that's what happens." And I said, "Look, we don't have an agenda. It is your agenda that we're trying to address. And that's the philosophy of UPA. And we continue to be that way. We continue to look at the needs on the ground and try to address them, of course, not only based on partner organizations' claims, but we also verify that with very scientific needs assessments and studies like that. So to go to Gaza, we have about 20 staff members in our Gaza office who luckily are all alive, thank God. A lot of their families have become martyrs, Unluckily, unfortunately, they all lost their homes. Our office the building was bombed, and so our office is gone. Maybe a little bit of the building is still standing. We are not sure. But the staff are there, and they are producing tremendous amount of stories that are on our website, on our blog. And the name of this series of stories is Life in the Middle of Death. And if any of you are interested in these, please visit our website, which is upaconnect.org. I think Waleed is a little bit ahead of me. He just put it on the chat there. And if you go to the blog, you would read these stories. They are so sad, and they are so creative and so indicative of the catastrophe that is unfolding every minute. And it's just their way to continue to persevere and to continue to put their voices out there to the world and to their colleagues in the other locations, and just to say we're here. So as far as our interventions go, since the beginning, since October 7th, we were able to do a lot, and primarily in the hospital support area. And luckily, and again, to go back to our strategic plan, the 5-year strategic plan, to go back to the philosophy of being proactive rather than reactive. One of our strategic goals was to look at our preparedness, emergency preparedness. And obviously, a lot of these emergencies, the first thing you think about is healthcare. You know, this is a matter of life or death. So to address or to enhance our emergency preparedness, 2 years ago, we started a program called the Fortifying the Palestinian Medical Sector. And we funded about $1.2 million or something like that dollars per year. And the way this works is we put out bids for pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and hospital consumables that are needed by our partner hospitals. And we purchase these, and in a month or two, we give it to the hospitals, and then we replenish that. And so at any time there's an emergency, we have a pipeline of supplies that is readily available. Within the first 3 or 4 days of the war or the attack on Gaza, we were able to supply hospitals with materials, hospital supplies, hospital consumables, pharmaceuticals that benefited 17,700 patients. So that is, again, that was right during the war. And to get these things from the warehouses to the hospitals, we had to use ambulances. Now, unfortunately, the supplies in the Gaza market have been depleted. And we have been working for the last month to compile. We have another program, which is our pharmaceutical gifts in kind program, which compiles pharmaceuticals and medical supplies from manufacturers all over the world based on the need in Palestine and in Lebanon. So we have compiled pharmaceuticals and medical supplies for Gaza worth a little over $100 million that have been sitting in Amsterdam for 3 weeks. And finally, we had a major breakthrough. That shipment will be flying to Arish in a couple of days. And we have worked out all the logistics. So in a few days, hopefully within not more than a week, it should be able to be used in Gaza. So that's on the medical side. It took a lot of doing. It took a lot of pulling of strings and things like that, but that's what UPA does. The other things that we are doing or that we have done so far, I don't know if Walid, can I share my screen, or is that something you want to put up that impact sheet that we have?
Is this a slide, Saleem, that you had sent to Walid, I think, right?
It is.
Saleem, you can share your screen now.
I can share my screen? Okay, thank you. Let me see.
Are you finding the share screen, Saleem, or no?
I am. I'm just, some reason, unable to share it.
Walid, do you have it? Are you able to share it instead?
Yes, I can share it from my side.
Thank
okay,
you.
so we'll do that, Saleem. Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit technologically challenged here. Thank you, Walid. So in terms of all the interventions, this slide shows the different districts in Gaza, the different governorates, and in terms of dry food parcels, we served 11,500 people. Thank you, that's perfect, Walid. In terms of fresh food parcels, we served 28,850 people so far, and that is, it's dated December 15th, which is tomorrow, not today, and that has been prepared for, we have a board meeting tomorrow, so it's for our board meeting, but that's the numbers so far. In terms of hygiene kits and dignity kits, 16,800 people benefited from that. You can read it. Winter clothes, 11,500 people. Hospital support, 17,700. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Clinical services, and that is through our mobile clinics that are going around the shelters. We have mobile clinics with 4 or 5 medical personnel, a doctor, a male nurse, a female nurse, and a community health worker. Clinical services for 27,000 patients. Psychological support activities for children, 36,000 children benefited from that. And if you look at the map, you would see what programs or what interventions were done in each district. So this is what we did in a month and a week.
It's amazing. That's really amazing, Saleem.
Thank you. What we are planning to do, in addition to the pharmaceutical shipment, we have allocated 2.25 million for food packages that are being assembled as we speak. And these food packages will be loaded on 75 trucks and will benefit 500,000 people, will contain 150,000 food packages. So these are going to start rolling in. I think we have, you know how you wait to get your turn with the permissions and everything else. I think we have an opportunity to have first package or the first couple of trucks go in on Sunday if all things work out. But then again, this is so unpredictable, and you know, if the guy on the checkpoint or the inspection station, you know, had a bad day that day, maybe it won't go in. So, but anyway, as far as our commitment, we are committed to $2.25 million, 150,000 food packages benefiting 500,000 people. There will be 75 truckloads that would hopefully go into Gaza over the next month or so. So this is what we're doing. What you can do is really either scan that QR code, or I'm sure Waleed, being ahead of me all the time, put a donation link on the chat. Look, no donation is too small. Any donation that anybody could participate in this effort, which is a tiny effort in the bigger scope of things, in the bigger scope of what the people in Gaza are suffering and enduring. What we are doing is a tiny bit, but anything helps, and any support would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, that's really incredible stuff. And I mean, like you said, I mean, I think, you know, it's so important for people to see the scope of what you're talking about, and then also to understand that scope in relation to the need. Mm-hmm. Because again, like, you know, the unpredictability of even the ability to have access to all of these, you know, all of these resources is part of the torture of this of this war, right? I mean,
yeah, the big challenge, absolutely.
Yeah. So I wonder, you know, one of the things that, given what both you and Joyce have talked about in terms of the difficulty of ensuring that access to all of these goods is even, you know, is even made available, is what do you say to people, Saleem, then, when, you know, in my circles, for example, people have said, Naila, yani, what's the use of us giving donations now if this money is not going to make it, and it's not going to go through, and it's not going to reach the people who need it? And, you know, part of what I've been saying is, we're looking at this, you know, people are looking at this as kind of an immediate thing and not recognizing that we're talking about a generation or more that is going to need rebuilding and recovery and support, and whether it's psychosocial support, cash support, whatever it is, right? We're looking at an entire strip of land that is going to need to be rebuilt if we're even allowed to go back to it.
Right.
So this isn't just about an immediate sense of need today. It's also about, you know, making donations to help support what's going to happen later. One of the things that AFF has done, and so I'll just take this moment to kind of talk a bit about our additional fund, which is, you know, different and separate from the fund that you and Joyce's organization, as well as Ta'awun, are a part of, is the AFF Pooled Fund, which is a much smaller kind of, you know, a place where people can donate 10, $5, $2, whatever it is. Like you were saying, Saleem, like no donation is too small. We did have an initial donor fund, funded support for $50,000 that kind of launched that fund for us. And essentially what we're doing is we're just keeping that money for a group of community-based foundations in Gaza, led by our member, one of our AFF members, which is Tawasul. Tawasul is the program manager for Tawasul is Ammar Marwan, who's in Gaza, who I speak to every single day. And we text each other every single day, literally just to make sure he's still living. Ammar has had access to his bank account on and off over the last 2.5 months. Does not have access to his bank account now. The Tawasul's bank account has been inactive for a while. They haven't been able to access any of their money. And, just the reality of even sending Ammar $5,000 and negotiating with him whether I should send him 5 or 10 was based on, literally him saying, La, Naila, send 5, because what if I don't make it? Like, what if I'm not alive the day that I have to go pick up the money? Then you will have sent all this money that nobody can access. Yani, it's such a cynical reality and just shocking. And so that's another thing. And our response to people who are making those donations is to say, yes, I may not be able to send this money to Gaza today, but I promise you that when all this is over and the day after, we will talk with Ammar and the rest of the organizations in Gaza that he's in touch with and ask them directly, what is it you need this money for? And that's how we're going to be disseminating that money, right? So I have that same question to you. What are you telling donors who are asking you the same question?
Okay. I have not faced this question from any of our longtime donors. This is part of our sumud, is to continue to do what we're doing as UPA. Luckily, we have not had a problem sending money to Gaza, although the banks are closed. We get a daily report from our bank, which is Bank of Palestine, what ATM machines are loaded and functioning. And we circulate this to our partners and our staff and anybody who that we owe money to go to that machine, and they could withdraw their money. The other thing, which is more important and really humbling, UPA, like I said, is not known by everybody in Gaza, but the people that know UPA in Gaza have known it for 45 years. And we have a lot of everything I mentioned in that infograph is all locally procured and distributed. So far, we have not brought anything from outside Gaza. The thing is going to start with the food packages, the trucks, and the pharmaceuticals, the major shipment. These are the first 2 interventions to bring into Gaza. We have had, we've purchased from local farmers, local vendors, and what these guys say, we approach them. They say, okay, we have, I don't know, so much tomatoes are being produced or being harvested. And they say it's for UPA, and they say, okay, you could take it, you could pay us later. So this is the kind of presence that UPA has. In an emergency, it is not about getting the money. It is about putting the aid out there. On the idea of aid and development, this is an ongoing discussion, an ongoing conflict, if you will, in the humanitarian space, because a lot of times you say, no, we don't want to do aid, we want to do development. We don't want to do development, we want to do aid because this is what we do. People, different people have different philosophies, or different organizations do. And we internally at UPA, we struggled with this a little bit, on the idea of being proactive rather than reactive. Aid, of course, is reactive. But we realized that to be true to our mission, we really have to do some of both. hopefully more development than aid. But the reality is we live in an environment where emergency is a way of life. So some of this reactive mode has to come into play every now and then. And if you look at the history in Gaza, it's been every couple of years there's an emergency. This one is unprecedented in its magnitude, and it's just the I can't even describe it. This is unprecedented, but so we have to act, we have to react, we have to address. People are dying, and you know you have to do something. People are starving. People are, and again, we're not really saving lives. People that are dying, unfortunately, are dying. We are helping those that continue to live a little bit. Well, I can't claim that we are, we're not really setting the world on fire, despite all these infographics and everything. I mean, we have to be true to what we are doing. We have to be honest with ourselves. And in this magnitude of a catastrophe, it's a humanitarian catastrophe. What we are doing is a drop in the bucket, but this is what we can do, and this is what we have to do, and we have to continue to do it.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I just honestly, I mean, this conversation could go on for hours and days and days and days, and we wouldn't reach the end of it in terms of talking about what we need, what we can do, how we can do it. And then also just to share the angst and anguish and despair and pain of this. I mean, what you're saying, unprecedented. Yes, it's a horror that is unprecedented. I agree. It's something that, I mean, I'm not as young as you might think. So I've seen a couple of iterations of this. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen anything like this in my memory, in my lifetime. And I definitely hope never to again. But I think, I want to ask any of the participants and the attendees if they have any questions. I've asked people to let us know if they have a question in the Q&A, and we do have one that I'm going to ask Joyce. It's a question for Joyce. So it says Joyce had mentioned that the main focus of the AFSC is peace and justice. And can you give an idea about what those interventions are likely to be? And I guess if I'm understanding the question, likely to be in this context. So maybe like what would an intervention around peace and justice in a post-war Gaza look like from the Friends' perspective?
Well, we have, thanks for that question. I just wanted to also just mention that on the scale that Saleem was just talking about, the UN is saying that to just meet the basic needs, we need 7,000 trucks to come in every day. Imagine that. 7,000 trucks. And we're getting what, 100 and some in every day?
Not even.
Yeah. It's horrific. It's horrific. It's that is the reality. To answer the question, and I think it kind of has. I also want to link to the past question from you, Naila, as well, because I think they're connected. AFSC all over the world, we believe in decolonizing our approach. Now, it's hard for me to speak about that because I am Palestinian myself, but still, as an American Quaker organization, is that we to decolonize means that we allow ourselves to be led by the communities struggling. And so Gaza and Palestine is no different. We do not prescribe anything. And in Gaza today, my hope, because you asked about sort of a post-war scenario in terms of aid, I hope that we will continue to be led by local civil society organizations, leaders in Gaza, and for us to heed their calls, for us to really be guided by them and what they feel their priorities are and their solutions are, and we will be there for them. And I think that is something that we will continue to be committed to. So in terms of peace, I think that likewise, we need to continue being led by those who are calling for peace and the Palestinian community and what they want the future of Gaza to look like. We do not prescribe anything. And so whether there be elections, there's a lot out there about who is going to govern Gaza, and that's for Gazans and for Palestinians to decide, and no one else. And so I think our hope is that peace will prevail, that Palestinians will have self-determination, statehood, freedom, dignity, economic prosperity. All of that is are the notions that we will be supporting, but we will be led by them. I just wanted to make sure that that's clear, that as an American organization, we stay out of it. We just support the people.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I think, and I think that's so critical. And again, it goes back to, why did AFF center these three organizations in our, Gaza appeal? Why specifically, and even some people were like, yeah, but American Friends, it literally has the word American in it. And I said, yes, I understand that. But you're looking at the person who leads it is a Palestinian and is a local and has local teams on the ground. And I think this whole decolonization of aid movement has been so incredibly interesting to me. And I'm just very fascinated by the level of that discourse, because I mean, I'm definitely someone who's, very much about like burn the whole thing down, change all the systems, revolutionize the entire world. And so the decolonization of this space that we are in, I think, is a very critical piece for that. And again, why did we choose Ammar and Tawasul in Gaza to kind of launch this pooled fund with, rather than with somebody outside who might have access to their money immediately? Because of exactly what you've just said. This is the community that needs it. This is the community that's going to get it. And this is the community that's going to decide what to do with it. And we're going to put our trust that they know better than anyone else what they need. I think the other thing that's also really critical, and I think you've touched on that as well, Saleem, is that we keep talking about this issue as, the Gaza crisis, the war on Gaza, but this is a Palestine problem. This is happening across the entire country. And I use that word very, very, very purposefully. There are issues and incursions happening in the West Bank where, Hamas is not in control. So this is not a Hamas problem. This is not a war of equals. And I think that's another piece of this for me that's very important, is that we're not just trying to make sure that we can support people in Gaza today, but really also that we can support Palestinians as a whole, wherever they may be, and wherever this need is going to be. And the need is going to increase exponentially. And I think beyond anything that we've seen in the last 100 years. So I'm just curious to hear, we don't have any other questions here, which is totally fine. I have plenty, so we could do this just from my questions alone. But I would like to give both of you an opportunity just to reflect a little bit more on what this looks like for you moving forward. So Saleem, I'm going to ask you to go first. Given everything that given everything that you've experienced, given that you are a born and bred Palestinian, what are you hoping you'll be able to accomplish as UPA, and then you as Saleem?
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to go back to what you said about, which is a segue to what I want to talk about. Talk about the war between Israel and Hamas. This is a narrative that the Western world, the media and governments and everybody else in that space is trying to establish, because they have already established that Hamas is a terrorist organization, and they continue to repeat that, which by default, when they say the war between Israel and Hamas, in the Western mind, gives legitimacy to that war. So we have to be careful about the terms we use, the thing, you know, how we use these ideas that are perpetuated, and sometimes without knowing. They just keep hearing them on the news every day, especially if you live in the US or in Europe or somewhere. You hear these, and all of a sudden it becomes part of our narrative. So we have to be careful about these things. So this is, like you said, this is not a war between Israel and Hamas. This is not a war, really, because a war, a definition of war is you have two armies. This is resistance to an occupation. This is a genocide, perhaps, but this is a resistance to an organization, regardless what people might think of Hamas, whether they agree with its political agenda, whether they don't, and everybody has their own opinion and is entitled to it. But the reality of this is people are resisting occupation. In France, when it was occupied by the Germans, the French resisted the occupation, and they were called freedom fighters, or they were called, whatever, the French resistance. They were not a terrorist organization. So we have to be careful about these things. If you look at the number of countries that recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization, you could probably count them on one hand. I mean, I'm exaggerating to make a point. I really don't know the exact number, but I assure you the magnitude of this narrative is exaggerated on purpose by people who need to do that. Mm-hmm. So we have to be careful about this. So when that aggression ends, I think the first thing we have to realize and the first thing we have to advocate for is building bridges between the Palestinian communities that have been fragmented since 1948. And by that, I don't just mean political factions. I don't mean Hamas and Fatah. I don't mean any such thing. I mean that the Palestinian communities that continue to exist in Palestine, outside of Palestine, in Lebanon, in the diaspora, everywhere, we have to build these bridges, and we have to discontinue this fragmentation that was by design enforced on the Palestinian people. And for instance, the Palestinians in Lebanon are almost the forgotten group of Palestinians. Of course, there are, in all the Oslo agreements, a mention of the right of return. Of course, nothing has been agreed upon in that space, but then again, that continues to marginalize the people that are in the camps of the diaspora. So I think the first thing we need to be mindful of is reuniting the Palestinian communities as one people, regardless where they are. I think one of UPA's strategic goals on the humanitarian effort scale is to create a platform where all like-minded organizations could be working under one umbrella. And that's a tiny example of what should happen at large within all the Palestinian communities. And if we manage to do this, not when there is peace, but even now, and we're advocating for this. We're talking about this. We're inviting people to think about this. Obviously, in an environment where we have been programmed to be a feudal society, not a corporate society, there will be some pushback about that because everybody wants their own space, their own organization, who's going to be the chairman of the board, all that stuff. But we have to continue to advocate for this unity of the Palestinian communities, and we could start with the Palestinian NGOs perhaps as people who could set an example for that collaboration. That's what I see us doing. That's what I would like to have as my last chapter, is to work towards this unity.
Mm. So important.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and we'll work with you. We'll work with you to do that. I truly, no, you have it. It's khalas, it's on record.
Inshallah.
Absolutely.
I want it in writing now.
Absolutely. You have it on video from my own mouth. No, really, that's yani, yeah. I mean, because this is it's a commitment from me as well. So absolutely.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I'd like to weigh in.
Yes, you are the next one. We have 5 minutes to go. So you're
no, but absolutely with I'm completely in agreement with Saleem that should be the sort of the end game. I'm afraid stuck in where we are today, and I'm stuck, and I'm afraid, and I'm worried about what's to come. I feel that that place where we say the aftermath is long coming, and I think I know that it's going to get much worse before it gets better. We see, genocide happening every day. A lot of theories about ethnic cleansing and pushing the Gazans out at any point in time. We have seen the beginnings of all of this starting up in the West Bank. We all heard the news about Jenin last night, and that the West Bank is next. So this is going to be a long haul, and so I kind of it's hard for me to think about that future at the moment, where I know that people are going to be dying from starvation. I heard Bisan, who I follow on Instagram, I'm sure a lot of people follow Bisan. She reported that people ate a donkey to stay alive in Gaza, a donkey. And I mean, so to me, that's why we're trying to focus, I mean, on the little we can do on advocacy here in the United States, calling for a ceasefire immediately, because that needs to just continue being at the forefront. The shameful veto of the U.S. At the UN is just awful. But we also saw some shifts in governments that previously at the General Assembly that previously abstained or voted against the motion for a ceasefire have shifted, and so that is positive. So we see some shifts, but we need to keep. We can't fatigue from this. We can't. We have to stay on the streets. We have to continue to call for a ceasefire. Call in the U.S. our representatives. If anyone on this who's listening is a U.S. citizen, call your reps. Write to them, inundate them. That is making a difference. And I know it's slow and maybe a little too little, too late. But I think we need to continue to protest, continue to go on the streets, continue to call. none of us can do this alone, and so we need to, garner our efforts and do what we can to stop this genocide from happening. And so that is something that we all have our little pieces, and we need to stick together, be relentless, persevere, support communities, support the movement in any way we can. Financially, yes, other means, yeah, there are a whole lot of things. Each and every one of us needs to sort of wear their activism hat every day and say, okay, what can I do today? What story can I write? What op-ed can I write? What letter to the editor I can write? This is also a war on the media. We have to remember that. The misinformation, the dehumanization that's happening every day in the media. So we have to, continue to call them, continue to send them. I send messages to CNN and MSNBCs, like calling them out on something they said or something they reported on or something they didn't report on. And so I think that needs to be something that we all do, and because that's easy, that's not difficult. And we are all called, each and every one of us, each Palestinian, wherever we are living, we are called to action. And action takes many, many forms. And so I'm hoping that is the message that people who listen to this call are taking with them, that we just need to keep on it until Palestine is free and until dignity is restored.
Absolutely, 100%. And I mean, I know you're with me on LinkedIn, you're with me on my social media. We are relentless. We won't stop. We won't be silenced by any stretch of the imagination. I have committed, and my team, my incredible team at AFF is committed that this issue is going to be central and focused for us as long as it continues and until there is justice. So we'll continue to amplify people's voices. We'll continue to amplify the amazing work that your organizations are doing. And we really, invite people to ask us the questions so that we can then reach out to you and other organizations to answer those questions. And even questions about where's the funding going? How can I support more? Where, are there opportunities for volunteerism? Whatever it is, we're happy to be like a receptacle of these questions and criticisms or whatever it is, so that we can make this information available. That's one of the key things for me. And the purpose of what this network is about. We're not doing anybody any favors if we're not sending out the information that people need to be able to make a difference. And I really think this is the defining issue of our time. So if we're quiet on this one, then we might as well just close up. So we're at time. We're a minute over time. I'm so grateful to both of you, really, just for sharing and for talking about this, because this is not an easy thing to talk about. And I know we talk about this every single day. This is a conversation I'm having every single day with different people. I'm sure the same is the case for you both. So I really appreciate that you've taken such a long time to sit with us and kind of give me and give the attendees all of this in-depth information, and a lot of it personal. So thank you both so much. Thank you for also leading these incredible organizations that are doing incredibly impactful work, and your teams that have put their lives on the line. I mean, I don't even have the words really to thank them. And yeah, we'll keep making sure people hear about this. And thank to everyone who stayed on. And I know people registered for this much more than were able to join, but we make all of these speaker series available online later, so the people will get recordings of this, and we'll make sure to amplify that as well. And I just want to say thank you both very, very much, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And free Palestine.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.